得未啊？4:5分啊嘛。會議開始。
I now call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda, confirmation of minutes. On the 20th of November as well as the 20th of December, we had meetings, minutes of which have been sent out to members. So far, we haven't received any proposed amendments. If you don't have any other amendments, please confirm the minutes. No questions? All right, thank you. Second item. Since the last meeting, 4 information papers have been sent out to members, and they're listed on the agenda. First of all, CB bracket 1, 700/13 to 14 bracket 01. Admin's response to the submission on the MTR train door safety. And then paper CB bracket 1836, letter from Wong Kwok-hing concerning the air quality in train compartments and preventive measures against the spread of influenza. CB bracket 1, 960. Referral from members meeting with district council members concerning the coastal railway between Chun Wan and Tuen Mun. The fourth one, CB bracket 1962, admin's response to submission on MTR's crowd control management at Causeway Bay Station. Third item on the agenda. The next regular meeting will be held on the 2nd of May 2014. It will be held at 10:45 on that day. And then we are going to have the highlight for the whole year, that is railway development. Railway development will be very important for our future. And that's why, on my part, I would very much like to see the overcrowding issue being resolved today. Because if you don't get that out of the way, there's no basis to discuss railway development. Therefore, we have got new railway projects all the time, and yet it is very difficult to squeeze into a compartment. That's because of the overcrowding problem. So on the basis of today's compartment density, we can then have further discussion about railway development and for how long we can have the services. So at the next meeting, we will devote the entire meeting to railway development. Questions? Mr. Wong Kwok-hing. Yes, I support your idea. Chair, I just wonder if we can get all of us, the Bureau as well as the senior management of the MTR, to take the train during the peak hours without notice, and then we can feel for ourselves how crowded it is. Not just the MTR, but also the light rail at the BC stations. Let's have a taste of the overcrowding at Admiralty Station. Yes, we can make the arrangements later on. Morning peak or evening peak? Up to you. I will make the arrangements. 6 p.m. at the Admiralty Station will be the best. Yes, we'll make the arrangements. Fourth item on the agenda today, capacity and loading of MTR's trains. We have already got the paper, and there's 980. Bracket 03 and 04. I think 3 members have, for the time being, raised their hands. The administration as well as the MTR have talked to me. They would like to have more time for this issue because we haven't had this discussion for quite a long period of time. So I promised to give them 15 minutes, and then I'll have 45 minutes left. So please indicate your wish to ask questions. Elizabeth Court, 8 and then 9. Clerk, please do the head count for me. Hold up your hand, please. Mr. Chong. Gary Fan, I think everybody's going to speak. And include myself as well. How many altogether? 12, and we're 45 minutes. Okay, I'll be strict. 4 minutes each. There won't be a second round. 4 minutes each, no second round. When your time is up, I'll stop you. Wong Kwok-hing, KK Kwok, Wu Chiu Wai, Chen Hong Wai, Elizabeth Kwok, Prince Chiu Ping, Chung Shu Ken, Chen Kem Lam, and Michael Tian. All right. For today's meeting, I'm not going to introduce the guest speakers. We have Professor Zhang, the secretary here, and also Mr. Jay Walder, CEO of the MTR on that side. Professor Zhang. The patronage of MTR is increasing all the time. During particular segments, we have seen that the loading is on the high side. We're also concerned for today's paper. This is to report to you about the situation and ways to improve the situation. Now, in fact, Mr. Wong Kwok-hing suggested that we should ride a train without notice. Yesterday, I took the train ride in the morning peak from Taiwan to Admiralty, and then yesterday at 6 o'clock in the evening, I went to Admiralty Station without notice to look at the situation myself. For the overcrowding of the MTR, how is it, and is it already up to the capacity? I would like to talk about the various points. For the various train compartments, it is based on the 6 persons per square meter design. This is the highest density that can be permitted at the time of design, which was based on the industry standards. And then we look at the capacity that can be taken by the signaling system, and then in every hour for every direction we have that figure, and that would come up with that would give us the design capacity. So we have 6 persons per square meter on average. So on average, we have between 25% and 72% for the MTR, but that refers to the average figure per hour during morning peak, between 25 and 72. For the rest of the time, under 40%. As far as the safety margin is concerned, the MTR hasn't exceeded the capacity, the design capacity. More and more passengers are using their mobile phones, their devices, tablets, and reading newspapers while on the train. Generally speaking, passengers require more personal space, and therefore the actual density has already dropped to about 4 standees per square meter. Therefore, in light of the requirements, we are taking 4 ppsm as the benchmark of our service for the purpose of deployment and adjustments. Taking 4 ppsm as the basis for the 10 heavy rail lines, 6 of them, East Rail, West Rail, Chang Kwan O Line, Island Line, Kwun Tong Line, and Chuen Wan Line, have their loading during peak hours in the morning at very busy hours reach up to 90% or even more. For East Rail between Taiwan and Kowloon Tong, and also Chang Kwan O between Yau Tong and Quarry Bay, it is already full to capacity. What does it mean for passengers? First of all, for the 1 hour in the morning peak, the train compartments are crowded and you have to wait for a longer time. Yesterday, my experience was that I had to wait for the next train. I couldn't get on the first train. I have to get on to the second train. But it doesn't mean that for every segment of all lines, they have the same problems. For the higher loading rates, they only occur during the morning peak hours at certain spots. During the morning peak hours, generally speaking, it appears between 7 and 9 o'clock when people go to work. But then the networks also extend to every part of Hong Kong. Therefore, passengers mostly come to the urban center at different stations for the same morning, during the same morning peak. Different platforms may see different loading, and then the density as well as the waiting time may vary. Fourthly, during the non-peak hours, that is taking 4 ppsm as the basis. Currently, the loading is on average 50%. Now, for the peak hours, for certain segments, indeed, the loading is on the high side. The MTR will take on the issue, and the measures are such that crowd management, new trains, replacing signaling system, punctually complete the construction of new lines, and also plan for new projects, and also consider relief measures. And I'll go into the details now. The MTR has already sent platform assistance to help, and there are new arrangements for lining up so that it's smoother to get on and off. Many measures have been taken to increase the frequency. Since 2012, with the new program they have already increased 1,300 trains, and whenever possible, short trips have also been added. And then there will be 4 more projects coming on stream, like the Western Island Line, and then South Island Line Eastern section, and then Kowloon Line extension, as well as in 2018-2020, SCL would also come into operation by phases. We can enhance the capacity. We can also divert the passengers. For such new projects, they are built. Their service will be benchmarked upon 4 ppsm. We have also completed the review and update of the railway strategy, and very soon we will make announcements about the future of our railway project. And then for the new project, and the target service benchmark is 4 ppsm. With this, we can enhance the capacity. We can also make sure that we can deliver on the target of diversion. It takes time to plan and complete the projects. So the MTR has already resorted to the following measures so as to enhance the capacity. First of all, for certain train frequencies, we know that they are yet they can still be further enhanced subject to signal systems. There will be new trains so as to enhance the frequency, so as to maximize the spare capacity allowed by the signaling system, so that we can achieve the maximum train frequency. There will be new light rail trains. First of all, we need to study the feasibility. This is because as to whether we can enhance the light rail frequency, it won't just be determined by the signaling system. It all depends on whether the at-grade road traffic as well as the at-grade signaling systems may impose a constraint. And then by phases, we're going to replace the signaling system throughout. The new signaling system can increase the capacity by about 10%, but then it will take a longer time. Most of it will become available starting from the year 2018. We'll ask MTRCL to see if there are other measures to enhance the capacity and ease the high loading during the peak hours. Initially speaking, measures that should be considered like early bird schemes. In the 80s and 90s of the last century, it was tried in the past, and we learned from the experience and tried to make reference to other similar schemes in overseas countries, so that we can have the result of diversion. And then for heavy rails, in the urban area, we have 340 seats, accounting for 20% of the capacity. If we reduce the number of seats, there can be more space for carrying more passengers. We'll try to study the pros and cons of removing some of the seats to see if it is feasible. Of course, we welcome comments from members today as well as the community. The government as well as the MTR will consider the options. Next, I'm going to ask Mr. J. Warder, CEO from NTRCL, to explain.
Honorable members, the Secretary has already explained the situation regarding the carrying capacity of our different rail lines. This is a very complicated subject. In a moment, I will ask our Operations Director, Dr. Jacob Kam, to briefly take you through some of the technical aspects of how we monitor and manage the loading on our trains. I would, however, like to highlight just a couple of points. When you look at the ridership figures, you can see that there is very strong and growing demand for rail transport. There's no question about that. As part of our listening and responding program, over the last year or so, we have added more than 1,300 train trips a week throughout the network. There still may be some room to make further small steps to provide relief in certain areas, but I would urge or say that they are small steps. Beyond that, we are accelerating the replacement of the signaling system on the MTR lines in the urban areas. This will cost several $billions and will employ the most modern of railway technology. And when completed, it can bring approximately a 10% gain in the capacity. But wholesale relief will only come from the creation of new rail lines, as is the case with the Sha-tin to Central Link that is currently under construction. Of course, crowding is a problem that is with us today, and major capital investments do take time. Neither the resignaling works that I mentioned nor the Sha-tin to Central Link will have an impact before 2018 at the earliest. In the interim, we need to think creatively about what else we might do to alleviate congestion in the near term before the capital works are completed and the capacity is increased. Some measures that we've been taking include adding platform assistance for the management of our stations, about 650 to date. They facilitate the effective movement of passengers in and out of trains. We will continue to do even more in this area. Our engineers will explore the possibility of replacing a few train seats with bump seats to create more multi-purpose areas, but this would not be done on a large-scale manner. And in the meantime, we will look at different incentives to encourage passengers to travel before the morning peak period. Before I close this and also turn this over to Jacob, I also think that it's good to mention looking forward, and the Chairman has just mentioned this a moment ago. The government sights are not just set on the 5 rail projects that we are currently constructing, but also as part of the rail development strategy review that's underway, looking at the forward picture. And I want to assure this subcommittee that we stand ready to support government in implementing its strategy for the long-term development of the railway in Hong Kong. Jacob will go through the more technical presentation for you now.
Thank you for giving us a few minutes to talk about the capacity of the MTR. Since 1979, we carry some 5.2 million passengers per day, and the efficiency is some 99.5%. But our capacity is subject to signaling, and I would like to report to you on our heavy line capacity. The congestion is not the same throughout 19 hours. You can see from these two pictures, we have a comparison in Kowloon Tong Station. During the morning rush hour, Yau Tong and Kowloon Tong, during busy times, on the upper side, we have the Kowloon Tong Station. The next diagram indicates during the busy rush hour, the busiest sections. So when we're talking about rush hour, we are only referring to these sections. For example, in Shun Wan Line, the busiest section is from Tsim Sha Tsui to Admiralty. So let's take a look at Admiralty. So when passengers leave their home, they board the stations and they travel to Admiralty, and after work hours, these passengers will concentrate in Admiralty. So we'll see that's from 6:15 to 7 o'clock, there is a lot of congestions. That is, in the morning they board at different stations, but at night they are concentrated in Admiralty. So what we want to do now is having higher train frequency so they don't have to wait so long. If you refer to the paper, we are aware that legislators are concerned whether we can add more train frequency. If you look at the table, if you look at the current capacity, if you compare that, there are some 5 lines where the signaling system is saturated. You cannot increase more trains. So, even so, we see some room for improvement. So, we hope that there can be more even dispersion of passengers and better use of space. We've also tried to manage the platform. In recent years, we have added 650 platform assistants. We urge passengers to spread out. When passengers board the train, we will also help them so that the trains can leave punctually. Why is this so important? Because our trains are traveling very frequently, 2 minutes per train. Every 2 minutes we'll have a train. So smooth embarking, disembarking is very important. If we have extra opening of the door, it will incur more time, and it might lead to the loss of one train travel frequency. We also have barriers to divert passengers to less crowded areas. In the fourth quarter of last year in Kowloon Tong towards Yamate, we have tried a new queuing system, and this has reduced embarking, disembarking chaos. So aside from the 5 lines, we do have other lines where we can increase train frequency, including East Rail, West Rail, Ma On Shan, Zhengguan-o, and Dongchong Line. In Dongchong Line, the passenger capacity can meet demand, but we will continue to monitor the situation. Next, looking at Zhengguan-o. In the peak rush hour, the busiest section is from Yaotong to Quarry Bay. If we want to increase the trains, I have to explain what I mean. In Bolam, 3+1, we have 3 from Bolam and 1 from Lohas Park. Every hour there are 18 trains. So even if you change to 2+1, Bolam every hour will only maintain 18 trains. But in Lohas Park, we'll have extra 2 trains. So of course in that branch there will be changes, but we'll still maintain 18 trains per hour. So this arrangement, when we can implement 2+1, then from Yaotong to Quarry Bay, we can increase the capacity there. We are now in the midst of implementing 2+1. You are also aware that we have 3 cross-harbor sections. When we have Sha Tin Central, we'll have an extra cross-harbor line. So that would be able to alleviate the 3 existing lines. Zhengguan-o, and the 2 other lines. So you'll see all the urban, aside from Hong Kong Island, they will see some alleviation. Regarding East Rail, West Rail, and Ma On Shan, there is some room to add trains. In the Sha Tin Central, we'll enhance the signaling system and we'll buy new trains. When the Sha Tin Central comes into effect in 2018, Ma On Shan will connect to West Rail, and we estimate that 23% of southbound passengers will take the new line and will have an alleviation effect. West Rail trains will lengthen from 7 cars to 8 cars, and by 2016 they can take effect. In 2016, our 8 cars can serve the West Rail, and when the trains are implemented in 2018, we'll increase the number of Ma On Shan trains from 4 to 8. In East Rail, since there's an enhancement in the Sha Tin Central signaling, they can have more frequent travel. So starting from 2019, East Rail can have more numbers of trains, and we can increase the number of passengers. So at the same time we're enhancing service, we see more passengers taking the MTR. We have to enhance the signaling. We now have a massive signaling enhancement system. We're spending billions of dollars to upgrade the signaling, and we forecast that by 2018 to 20 we'll be able to complete our work. We'll increase 10% passengers. But a long-term solution would be to build new lines. We are now building 5 lines. We forecast that by this year to between now and 2020 we'll see them completed. The government is about to complete its 2000 railway policy, we're talking about a time frame of 8 to 10 or even more time for the design, building, and implementing of a real system. Thank you very much. It's now 10 after 11. We're supposed to conclude at 11:40, so I'll propose we'll end at 12. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing. Chairman, I welcome Mr. J. Walder attending, but it's regrettable he's only attended now. I hope he can attend more frequently. I need to ask questions now. In paragraph 17, I have some questions regarding the improvement measures. The early bird concession, I urge that to be taken up as soon as possible, because this is a good measure, but this early bird concession should have a 30-40% discount for it to be attractive, because if passengers take this every day, they have to go to work early and they are giving up their rest time. So I think the government and MTR should subsidize this. And second, the seats in the trains, if it were to be removed permanently, I will not support that, because if we have foldable seats during non-rush hours that can be used, I think that would be acceptable. But we need to have the early bird scheme as an immediate measure. And third, I hope the Secretary can consider should consider buses. They also have an important role. I hope they can respond to my three questions. Mr. Walder, early bird scheme, 30-40% discount.
That are being made about an early bird scheme, and the corporation, together with government, I think will look at how schemes like this could be implemented on MTR. We will do that work both ourselves and with independent experts to help us in doing that. As part of that work, we'll review the experience of other places around the world as to how pricing mechanisms have helped to be able to do that, and I do hope to be able to come back with a thoughtful scheme for MTR.
Berlin offers 30% discount. So would you say that is the minimum that Hong Kong can offer to match Berlin?
I don't know what the right discount is yet and the right way to implement. Thank you. I'm sorry. I don't know the right discount and the right way to implement the discount yet here. There are a number of different ways that this is done in international experience. I think we need to look at it carefully, consistent with the travel patterns in Hong Kong, and do take experience in places like Berlin, Singapore, where they have a program as well, etc.
Can you respond to the folding?
Yeah, I'll ask Jacob to respond.
Chairman, first of all, I need to clarify that we cannot remove all seats. And when we use this multi-purpose space, it's because we found that there are more passengers with special needs, for example, wheelchair-bound, or people using baby carriages, and they welcome that because it gives them more space. So let me add that removing seats, it's not to increase passenger capacity. For example, if we remove a 6-person space, we're only adding 3 more space. We're only adding space for 3 more people. So if you have folding chairs, you might only be able to add 2 more passengers. In London, New York, and Japan, they found that it wasn't that popular, and there were also safety concerns. But we will explore this and see if we can identify other space. Secretary, could you respond to the bus question? Let me repeat. We're not going to let MTR monopolize transport. Next, Mr. Kwok-hing.
Mr. Chairman, eventually we have got the CEO of the MTRCL to come. I've been disappointed. This is because we haven't got much to be delivered before 2018. and yet we want to see changes to the fare structures. For the seating, I have reservation about the proposal. Currently, we have elderly passengers, pregnant ladies, or those who are not feeling well to take up the seats. Younger passengers no longer take the seats, so it won't be good to remove all the seats. Now, I want to ask a broader question, and that's for the Bureau. Now, I think there's something wrong with the governance of the MTRCL. Yesterday, the Secretary for Development reprimanded publicly the development of properties. Now we see problems of safety as well. And then you can see that for the CEO, he's collecting $12 million. Second to him, $9.5 million. And then for the board of directors, $60 million being collected, and yet we don't see the government monitoring and supervising the MTR. And 77% of the shares of the MTR are still in the hands of the government. But it's clear that we've been disappointed by the reply from the Bureau as well as the corporation. Now the government is encouraging the dominance of the MTR. But in the next 4 or 5 years' time, we haven't seen any relief to the overcrowding. Have we got other things, say, for example, supplementary modes of transport? Currently, the railway cannot cope with the demand. And then what is important is that in terms of the governance of the MTR, is there a problem? I find it very strange. Mr. Wilder came from New York. We are getting more and more like New York. That is, it is a system that's lagging behind. And in other words, we don't have a railway system that should be in line with a metropolitan city. Perhaps we should give some consideration to this culture. Secretary. MTRCL is a listed company. It has to meet all the requirements of good governance expected of a listed company. For our regulatory work over the MTRCL, well, the Transport Department is overseeing the MTR in terms of service delivery. And then the EMSD is also concerned about the rail safety. And of course, in terms of fare adjustments, we have a formula. Last year, we gave an account to members. The fare mechanism has been revised, and we also supervise that. Currently, as far as the public transport is concerned, MTR takes up 40%. In the coming years, there will be 4 more domestic lines in addition to the XRL. Still, the market share will only be 40% plus. In other words, the franchise buses are still playing a very important role in easing the traffic jams. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, let me finish. Earlier on at the transport panel, I've already said that later on we are going to have a review of the long-term planning of public transport. We'll look at the roles to be played by different modes. Mr. Chairman, whenever the MTRCL commits a mistake, the commuting public stand to lose, but no penalties for the senior management. Should there be a penalty system, say, for example, reducing the bonuses or remuneration or directors' fees? Then next, Mr. Gary Fang, I think you need to admit it. You can't dodge it. Now, Professor Zhang is now coming up with a new benchmark, closer to the international benchmark, to tell us that, in fact, it is exceeding the capacity, almost exceeding the capacity. I think it's much better than Gregory So when he talked about the receiving capacity of the tourism industry. He said that for Tung Chung line, he said that it wasn't overcrowded. In the year 2008, since then, some of the seats have already been removed so as to allow for more standing space. In year 2007, the two rails were merged and we have got more and more long-haul passengers. Now, the compartments are overcrowded. This is a fact. If you're still trying to reduce the seats, what about the disabled, the long-haul passengers, the pregnant ladies, the elderly? Now, I've got a complaint. Someone lives in Cheng Kwan O. He goes to Chun Wan as a security guard. start. He has to be on his feet for over 10 hours a day. You still ask him to stand while traveling on the train. It is just too cruel. Now, I think the administration must review the strategy or the policy of giving priority to railway. Blindly subsidizing the railway cannot resolve the problem of serious overcrowding. In year 1997, you permitted the franchise buses to have cross-harbor routes so as to divert the passengers. I think it is good. And then MTR, this is for you. Please put in more resources to do more earlier than 2018. Don't wait until 2018 to finish the signaling system improvement. This can increase the frequency. And then at Admiralty, I think we have got the bus rationalization scheme, but I think the bus and the rail should complement each other. Removing the seats and punish the passengers by asking them to be standees would not be a good solution. Director of Bureau, cross-harbor bus routes and also bus route rationalization. Mr. Chairman, for our transport policy, we have public transport as the backbone, and then 90% of the commuters rely on public transport, and railway is the backbone of public transport. We aren't saying that we solely rely on the railway. Even as of now, railway only takes up part of the market only. Well, SDH, the fact is that it is dominating. For Chung Kwan O residents, they have fewer and fewer cross-harbor bus routes to choose from. So they are packed like sardines while on the MTR trains. That's why we have asked you to visit the stations and take a train ride during the peak hours. Chair, we have the district-based bus route rationalization schemes. We don't just cut the bus routes. We have also got more services. We want to optimize the bus service. For many years, we have already got guidelines. During the peak hours, if the patronage cannot reach up to 50%, and if there is alternative choice, then the TD would consider merging certain bus routes or cutting certain bus routes. So for rationalization, it isn't just about cutting them. As to whether the two of you would agree on whether the MTR has the monopoly, I think it can become a long debate. But the question is, can we have more bus routes to cross the harbor? Well, the TD in particular out of the government has been looking at the matter. When there is a demand, of course, we have to respond to the when there is a demand, of course, we have to meet the demand. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, there is a lot of grievance in the society. When you take a ride on the train, it is so very overcrowded. I'm really worried. I hope that when there is an unrest, should there be an unrest, I hope it won't originate from an MTR incident. Just like 10 years or so ago, there was an unrest arising from a problem with taxis. Now, for the solutions presented to us, I think we have to look beyond 2018 when we have got new service, new lines. Otherwise, overcrowding would stay with us. Between now and 2018, there are 4 years to go. What is the government going to do? Would we just be told that there will be one review after another? Does it mean that we can count on reviews to solve the problems? Past experience told us that for the early bird scheme, it was really helpful in easing the morning peak problems. 5 or 6 lines are already entirely filled up during the morning peak hours. So I think we must make good use of an early bird scheme. The government must give a speedy reply. Another question is also about the peak hours. Now, during the peak hours, the MTR just cannot cope with the passenger demand. I think the government should talk to the bus companies so that we can have some feeder bus services, and we should also have point-to-point service covering busy segments, like from Mong Kok to Admiralty, so that you don't just have to rely on the MTR, so that it can see us through the coming couple of years. I think that's very important. And then we hope, of course, for the new benchmark, it is 1 to 4. I mean, for PPSM, I think you should adopt that as the benchmark. For the removal of seats, I think the arrangement of seats is good. We have the sort of seat just for passengers to lean against. I think that sort of seating arrangement can provide more capacity. But if you just count on reviews and reviews, if you don't implement the measures in the short term, then it means that the passengers will be very much angry, and then the anger cannot get vented out, and then one day there may be an unrest, a social unrest arising from an MTR incident. Now, many members would like to know what are we going to do between now and 2018. SH, anything else to add in addition to your earlier reply? To enhance the capacity, we need new service, new trains, new lines, provided the signaling system permits. Yes, I understand the point. Now, the fact remains that we don't have overcrowding at each moment throughout the day. So maybe by relying on certain measures, we can divert the passengers to other time, and then we can perhaps ease the problem. So by diverting the passengers to take the train at other hours, I think it can help. In major cities like Tokyo and others, they have done the same. But it doesn't mean that we can automatically copy them. Do you have a timetable? We are already studying the matter. Can you not be more specific about the timetable? Maybe MTR can supplement.
We're studying the issue now. It's complicated. I don't want to give a specific time frame. I think we need to look at it in the round in terms of what will work best here. And indeed, not even just on the question of pricing, but how we encourage people through actions with employers to give more flexibility in working times. Because in other places, that's also been seen to be a very critical element of making these types of schemes successful. Again, let me repeat, MTR has sought to be able to move quickly to do things. We added 14 new trains, 1,300 train trips over the last 2 years. We're virtually at the limit, as Dr. Campbell pointed out, of the capacity on the signaling system. But we are continuing to add more staff. We've added over 8% of staff to be able to manage this. I think on the question of seats, I think the points that have been made are well taken. The trains are used by many people in our community, elderly, people with disabilities, etc., and we need to be cognizant of that.
Mr. Warder, today, for the first time in many, many years, we were told a new standard. Because of the new standard, the picture becomes much clearer. This has aroused tremendous public interest in terms of remedial measures immediately. I think, on behalf of this committee, I would like to request you to come up with relief measures as quickly as possible, because this is what everybody expected. Otherwise, you come up with a new definition, but there's no solution. Okay?
We will endeavor to do so. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Tony Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During the peak hours, the trains are crowded. Overcrowded. In fact, it has attracted dissatisfaction for a long time. Since July last year, I've been asking this question about the design standards. Even in December, when I asked a written question, I didn't get an answer. It is only now that we get the answer. Why? This is because we are talking about 6 ppsm. What does it mean now? Look at me. Now, for someone like me, it will be difficult to squeeze so many people into this space, not to mention Mr. J. Warder of his size. Now, we are talking about a loading of 70%. It's mind-boggling. The figures are delusive. If you say 4, I've got this. It is much better, more comfortable. So, government, MTR, don't deceive us by using the figures. In the future, whenever you present the figures, base it on 4 ppsm. I'm glad to see that for the new projects, it is based on 4 ppsm, so that you have this much of space. But you haven't taken into account the trolleys, the suitcases. Correct, Mr. Chairman. 4 and then 6. How can we supposed to stand like this?
My question is, during design, the passenger capacity in the first few years of the new lines, did they want 100% capacity or just 70%? Because future growth would not be seen in the early years. So we now have 4 or 5 lines, new lines being built. What are their standards, especially in the first 3 years? The second question, we have a lot of lines that are saturated and the figures are more than 100%. We haven't even considered return trips. So let's say you work in Admiralty, you need to travel to Central, of course it's crowded, but after work hours, from Admiralty to Central, it won't be so busy. So if you come up with the average, it becomes statistics again, and if you look at paragraph 16, we have different factors at play. So I hope in the future, the MTR or government don't lie with statistics again, and in this period, come up with some measures to divert or the traffic, or come up with fare concessions to relieve the congestion. Mr. Jie Wai-chun wants to know, what is your design lifespan?
I think there is a misconception here, and I'd like to correct it. There is not a new standard that MTR is using. The design standard for our railway is 6 passengers per square meter. That is what we designed the railway to. That is for the safety of the railway, and it is consistent as an international benchmark for the design of railways. The choice that people are making is their preference. The observed behavior is that we are achieving about 4 persons per square meter, which is one of the reasons why you see the left behind on the platform that is there. Now, I appreciate that the train carriage is crowded and that people may not want to move on to the carriage. But I don't think we can say that we have changed our design standard in the way that we're designing our railways.
Thank you.
Hello.
Each system has its limit, and the closer we are to the limit, the lower the safety. So I'd like to ask, if we just change the signaling system and if we don't upgrade anything else, if we increase trains, will that affect safety? That's my first question. Second question, New Territories East and New Territories West, the population there is growing. So even if you upgrade the signaling system, you increase the passenger capacity by 10%. So is that going to grow faster than the population growth? Have you made forecasts? The third question is, the whole rail system, for example, in West Rail and Zhongguanou, it's been saturated in almost 10 years. Have we underestimated the population growth? Fourth question, I hope that the administration, aside from making some random checks during rush hour, so I hope that they can come up with a demonstration of 4 people per square meter and 6 people per square meter and show us the difference. We might, when we conduct a visit, we might only, if you just look at the platform, it's not enough. We want to look at what it's like inside the train. And so I hope that we can have this demonstration. Thank you. Secretary, regarding the signaling upgrading, I'll defer to the MTR. Now, when we build new lines, we consider a few factors: the need, the demand, the population, the economic activity, and we'll also consider the costs and the economic return and the financial implications and so on, and development needs and so on. So we look at it from along a series of considerations. Railways are a mass transit and green form of transport. But if it's not cost effective, then we of course need to rely on other modes such as buses. So that has always been our principle. Regarding the 6 people per square meter and 4 people per square meter, I'd like to follow up on Mr. Walder's comments. So our consideration is to maintain safety even when it's 6 people per square meter. So in some cities such as Tokyo, they're really packed like sardines. But we're concerned about safety. But now, in fact, we are using the service guideline of 4 people per square meter.
Yes, I want to be very clear. There is no question of safety in regard to what we are doing right now at all.
Okay. 信號系統咧實在
The legislators' understanding is correct. We're calibrating the signaling, but that will not increase the capacity by 10%. We are spending billions of dollars to upgrade the whole signaling system. We're using the latest technology. And aside from a brand new signal system, we want to maintain safety. And during the transition, we also need to maintain safety. And when we upgrade to the new system, we cannot shut down the MTR. So we have to maintain safety throughout the time. I'm not just referring to the signal system. Your other systems are already saturated. There's also fatigue in other areas. I agree. The rail system is a system engineering issue. So access paths, we need to handle the extra passengers. Our other designs, the electricity supply and rail and so on, have to also be upgraded. We've always been concerned about congestion. You don't need to rely on figures. During rush hour, you go to the stations. It's jam-packed like sardines. You have to wait 2 or 3 trains. I don't even need to look at your figures. We receive all kinds of complaints. But in the past, when we followed up in LegCo, the MTR has been saying that it's only operating at 70-80%. It's not congested. But now all of a sudden we see this new standard, and we are now talking about signaling, and in Zhongguan it's 106% during rush hour. And now, today, we see that there are measures to relieve congestion. They're adding trains, but it will only take effect in 2018. But to use Zhongguan as an example, the population growth there is very quick, and now we have to wait till 2018 to add trains or for other measures. So what's going to happen in the meantime? Do they have to suffer like sardines? And if you refer to paragraph 19 of the paper, you say that 4 new rail lines will be using the new 4 persons per square meter benchmark. So, can you respond to my questions? I recall saying in the beginning that the 4 new lines are designed with the 4 person per square meter benchmark. And after 2020, when we have the new railway blueprint, we'll use this new standard. We won't go backwards. But the design capacity, we're saying even if it's 6 people per square meter, there will be no safety problems. In Zhongguan, when we started procuring trains 6 years ago, we could foresee that we wouldn't have enough. And using the 2+1 arrangement, we can relieve congestion. And in Bolam, we won't reduce the service of 18 trains per hour. Well, the government should have been aware of congestion a long time ago, along with signaling problems. So when did the government first realize this problem, and why didn't they do planning earlier? We're constantly monitoring the situation, and we've been using this service benchmark for quite a while. For example, 6 years ago, we spent $1.5 billion to purchase 14 trains. So that's why in the last 2 years, in our listening program, we've been able to enhance our performance. The upgrading of signaling system is very complex while still providing our service. Usually it takes 8 to 10 years, and in the last 3 years we've conducted analysis and planning. So that's why in 5 years' time we could. So you're now in serving. You have 18 trains per hour in Bolam. Under 2+1, well, we've increased capacity by 8%. So it's now 92. Next. Regarding the initial design, that dated back to 1979, 6 people per square meter. So we now have 4 people per square meter. So when did you observe this new development? So this didn't occur overnight. So whether lifestyle changes or whatever, this should have occurred a while ago. When did you first notice this? And the early bird concession, that's, well, it's very simple. Why do you still need to engage an overseas university? Why don't we have local consultants to do this? Since the MTR also had some concession programs in the past. Is this just? Are you just stalling? And third, I'd like to understand if we want the public to enjoy convenience and safety, could we have female-only carriages? Would that enhance quality and safety? And my fourth question is, in the 2000 railway blueprint, have you considered Kai Tak Kowloon East? And will you only consider the MTR in neglect of other forms of the transportation? The last point was about the railway blueprint. We do have an opportunity to address this at a later stage. So the other question was, when were you aware that Hong Kong people now prefer 4 people per square meter? Well, Chairman, these things change over time. We're always monitoring passenger numbers. In the mid-90s, passengers were still willing to accept 5 or 6 people per square meter. If you recall the black and white movies, you still recall congestion in public transport. But as times change, we see people's habits are changing. The question was, why weren't you aware earlier? Why did LegCo have to push you? 6 years ago, when we started to buy trains, we were using the 4 PPSM standard, and that's why we procured. If we continued to use 6 PPSM, so you were using the 4 ppsm standard a few years ago as a reference. Early bird concession. Why do you still need to do studies on this? There's been so much experience.
I certainly appreciate the importance that the Chamber places on early bird concessions, and I appreciate that. I do think that we need to look at this and to devise a program carefully in terms of being able to do it. We also need to be able to work collectively with government and employers to be able to try to get flexibility into the working hours.
Which university are you engaging to do the study?
We have been working with MIT, and we have also been working with professors who are affiliated with Stanford University. We will be using a local consultant to help us with this study.
I agree with a lot of legislators here today that of all the measures you talk about, which we can understand will take time, this is the one thing that shouldn't take too much time, because we've done it before back in the 90s, and other countries are doing it. You really should get on it right away. 下一位係潘兆平議員。
多謝主席，我雖然
Of course, Mr. Poon, thank you for allowing me to ask questions, though I'm not a panel member. Now, the administration has said that the rail provides a more comfortable riding environment for the passengers. Now, 4 ppsm will be the density for reference. Now, 4 persons, but then you know that many people have a huge backpack, and they may also have suitcases with them. So they're taking up more space. So I want to know whether this has also been taken into account before you adopt 4 ppsm. And then for the signaling system, we have to wait until 2018. I just want to know why it is so difficult. Why should it take so long? I think the earlier you can introduce this one, the better, so that we can solve the problem. And then for the early bird scheme, other than that, would you also have a concessionary scheme for taking the trains later? So we welcome options and solutions, but you are merely saying that you will be studying the issues. I don't know how long it will take. The Director of Bureau, that is the STH, has said that other modes of transport are also very important. Now, during the peak hours of the MTR, can you not talk to the bus companies so as to divert some passengers from the MTR to the buses? So have you taken into account the backpacks, Dr. Kam? First of all, for our rail service, we have to cater for the needs of different passengers. Some may carry backpacks, others suitcases, while others with shopping bags. So different passengers have got different needs, and there are also wheelchair users as well as parents with baby prams. We note the behavior of the passengers, and we count the number of people present, and 4 ppsm is the sort of level that passengers are willing to board the train. Now, for 4 ppsm, generally speaking, I think we can sort of cope with it. Myself and other staff members also take a ride frequently. Perhaps members are not quite clear about the idea of 4 ppsm. I think they observe 100 trains during the peak hours. They try to see what is the threshold that people would stop boarding. So when people stop boarding, then they check how many people are found on the train, and that's sort of the crowdedness. And it's the market that tells them, rather the other way around. So I want to know whether you have already taken into account to the extent of the prevalence of suitcases, prams, and backpacks. 10 years down the road, I don't think they care at all whether there will be more people using the backpacks. So 4 ppsm isn't a figure advised by an expert. I think that's the figure derived from the time when passengers are no longer willing to squeeze themselves onto the train. Thank you, Chair. You explained the matter in a much better way than myself. Can we not advance the completion time from 2018? We are doing our best to advance it, but then it is a matter of safety, and we mustn't affect the existing operation. So safety, it means that we can't make it earlier. Mr. Christopher Chung, not around. Mr. Chen Kam-lam. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Whether it's 4 ppsm or 6 ppsm, the fact remains that for the current rail system, it is indeed very crowded. This is not just because of the population growth. I think it is also related to the growth in the number of tourists. In the past, during peak hours, it was very crowded. It is also very crowded, but then it is more crowded during the non-peak hours as well, when compared with previously. So in the railway system, I think the crowdedness is already the norm. So whether it is 4 or 6 ppsm, I think has to do with the riding pattern. Some will find that it's too crowded and then they don't want to get onto the train and they will remain on the platform. As a result, the platform gets more and more passengers waiting, and then it is more and more crowded, and the latecomers have to wait for a few more trains before they can board. Platform management is therefore necessary. In the past, we used to have part-timers appealing to passengers to stand to move further into the train. Nowadays, we don't see many of them. At the major stations, yes, there may be staff members asking passengers to move further inside, but I don't think passengers take heed of their advice, so things are not satisfactory. I hope the MTRCL can do more in relation to this scenario. Another point is that probably the government has already observed that for the public transport, you don't want to let the MTR to monopolize the scene, but then we do see the dominance, and we have to reconsider the matter, and we should find out whether we should be so reliant on the rail system as before. And in recent years, the government has been saying that we need to find more land to house more people. In other words, residents will be living in many different corners of the territory. If we continue to rely on the rail only, I think it is outdated. And then the railway system has got a limit as to its capacity. What about the at-grade road network? I think it's time for us to revisit the topic, and I hope that the Bureau will commence the review in relation to road transport, so that very soon we can have better transport. Come the next agenda item, we'll be talking about the recent incidents. In fact, passengers are getting less and less happy with the mass transport systems. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your suggestions. Now it's my turn. I have 3 questions to ask. For the first 2, they are for the STH, the third one for the corporation. Now for the West Rail, for 4 ppsm, then the loading is 100%. We have 1,780 persons. By 2018, when everything is ready, then in other words, for West Rail, we have the East-West Link, we have the SCL, and instead of 7 cars, there will be 8 cars, and then there will be a signaling system. When everything is done, we will have 20% more capacity, that is 2,100. West Rail will be extended to Tuen Mun South, and there will be Hong Q Station, where 100,000 people live. So I want to know for how long can it see us through. And beyond that horizon, what are we going to do with the West Rail? And today, for the total number of passengers crossing the harbor, say during morning peak, say peak 8:30 a.m., I want to know about the total number of passengers crossing the harbor at 8:30 a.m. at all the 3 links. And then, with everything in place, and when we have 4 PPSM, I want to know about the total capacity. In other words, I want to know how many more years do we have to wait before we see a major problem emerging without any other new projects being planned. And then the third question, for the early bird scheme to divert passengers, would you adopt the previous criteria, 30% off for 6 to 7:45, 9 to 9:30, and then in the evening 5 to 6, 7 to 7:30. For morning is the exit time. For the evening concession is for the entry time. Would you adopt that previous mode? And what about the monthly pass holders? I think it doesn't make any significance to them. In other words, my question is, are you going to give a discount to the monthly pass holders as well? It's not difficult to do it. If they are to use it during the peak hours, then impose a surcharge so that eventually it will add up to a punitive level, they will be deterred. So would you give concessions during the morning peak and evening peak when people go to work and come off from work? We have to consider the traffic flows. We have to look at the number of patrons crossing the harbor. We have to look at the future population growth in different areas. Time is running out. What about West Rail? We haven't made ourselves over-reliant on the rail. We understand the different roles of other means of transport. What about West Rail? I can't answer the questions on the spot. It's important. So next time when we talk about the 2020 RDS, please give us the answer. What about the total patronage? We can give the figure later on. What about MTR? I can't give a figure off the cuff. If you haven't got it, then supplement the figure later on. It is important to get the figure. Without that figure, even when we talk about the future railway development in May, it will be meaningless. Concession.
Your question, in fact, highlights why we need to do a review to be able to implement the early bird program. Indeed, the question is more complicated than just the discount. It's how it's applied. It's how it fits into other fare structures that are there as well. As you talk about, in some cases it may be on entry, in other cases it may be on exit, and it introduces a lot of complexity in the fare structure and the understanding of what one is seeking to do. Again, the point made about the importance of looking at this and moving quickly to be able to do something is well understood. I just think your question shows why we have to look at it carefully.
Mr. Richard Yan, I'm most dissatisfied. It seems that the CEO is telling us that he hasn't got anything for us today. Everything will be stored, everything will have to be studied. Yes, the MTR CL is excellent. What I mean is that his pay is excellent, but then it's first class, but then the service is very poor. For the early bird scheme, today we don't even get a timetable. It is still to be studied. So you copy the tactics of C.Y. Leung. When he says something will be studied, it means he is delaying. I don't want to put further questions to you because even if I ask you questions, you can't give me an answer, can't give me a timetable. Now, STH, Professor Zhang, you are on the board of directors. Are you happy with the answer? And then you are overseeing the TD as well. Are you happy with this? For the whole question of overcrowding. If you haven't got the early bird scheme, really, it's impossible to resolve it. Yes, of course, to be frank, even with the early bird scheme, we can't resolve the problem, although it can ease the problem somewhat. Now, if you can't even ease it a little bit, then I'm not sure what you are talking about, what you are doing about it. And then another question is about the light rail. Again, the secondary school students traveling to school have to sort of pack themselves in such a way that they are really face to face, literally. Perhaps there's no solution at all. More cars, more vehicles, but then you have to do it 1 or 2 years later. Perhaps you should just dismantle it. So what about the light rail?
So, the Secretary, are you satisfied with the CEO's answer? Will you... Because the CEO hasn't given me a substantial answer. So we don't even have a timetable for the early bird concession, so why did we recruit him in the first place? Chairman, do you wish to have a timetable? I stated in the beginning that the early bird concession is worth investigation, but we need to be specific, because even though in the 80s, 90s, they had an early bird program, doesn't mean we'll use the same program now, because whether in London, Singapore, or Berlin, they have different modes of concessions. So we need to conduct studies, and if necessary, we need to coordinate our efforts with employers. We have to see how much concession will have an effect. I think, Chairman, you don't even need to talk about employers. We want... they're just leaving earlier and they can have breakfast somewhere near the office. You can't wait for employers to come up with an incentive. You don't need flexible work hours. They're just having breakfast closer to the office. Well, the MTR said they would work as soon as possible. The question now is, Secretary, do you wish to have a timetable? Chairman, we will not procrastinate, but we need to consider the early bird concessions. How can they be implemented? Can we have a response in 3 months? Can we have a solution in 3 months? We'll take note of legislators' comments. Well, I had managed time control. I thought I would end at 12, but since Ms. Emily Lau and Mr. Wong Kwok-hing just stepped in, we'll allow them to speak as well. Thank you, Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to speak. The MTR has let the public down. If you read in the newspapers that Mr. Paul Chan is criticizing them, well, MTR is making buckets of money, and this really gets us mad. I had taken MTR and Admiralty. I waited almost 10 cars at 7 p.m. The public will not accept this. Chairman, you asked for folding chairs. This morning, Chairman, there were no seats in the MTR that I took this morning. The doctor from MTR, he says times are changing. The public's expectations, they would like to sit on the MTR rather than stand in the MTR. So you need to do your best so the public can have a comfortable ride to work. So you need to urge MTR and have them do their job. You should not oppress the Hong Kong people. In the past, we used the MTR as a backbone, and that's why you cut a lot of bus routes. Well, I support environmental measures, but now we have accidents and mishaps. So you need a comprehensive review. We want people to be able to get to work in comfort. if you can provide flexible work hours, the government might be able to coordinate its efforts. If you're going to wait for flexible hours from employers, you'll never get there. You should really consider this from the public perspective. When have you taken the MTR? During busy hours. Have you taken the MTR during busy hours? That's because I told him to. So aside from those two occasions, sometimes I take the MTR on the weekends. Sharon, you have to ask them, how do they feel what the public feel? Do they understand what the public are saying? So give me a simple answer, Secretary. When can we expect a comfortable ride to work? I cannot provide a date. Well, you said 2020. He will be vacating his office by 2020. Well, we also have tourists, Chairman. A lot of facilities in Hong Kong are overburdened, so you need to think about that. I hope you can think about it. Mr. Lee Chuk-an had called for 3 months timetable. So we have no expectation. We can have no expectations after this meeting. Is 2020 the only deadline? Well, this highlights an important issue. The MTR as a backbone. Well, if it works, you might garner public support. Well, will you review this whole transport infrastructure? Chairman, they are already conducting a comprehensive review. Well, the reason why I can't give you a specific timetable, it's not just about a date. We've heard voices saying we can't rely on the MTR as a backbone, but on other occasions, legislators call for more rail lines. So that's why we need to strike a balance. We can't rely solely on the MTR. We need different modes. The buses make up 30% of the public transport. We respect their role. But in other discussions, we've heard that people call for building more rail lines, and including this committee. You want more rail lines, so we need to balance the different needs, and we need to optimize our strategy. So on the meeting on 2nd of May, you're saying that you'll call for 3 or 4 rail lines. Chairman, this is a railway subcommittee. It's very hard to find a balance, but that's what you're paid to do. Well, we're using the MTR as a backbone. That's the case in Japan, but they also need to review. After the war, they could choose a highway and a railway. We've chosen something similar to Japan. So it's up to us to change now. But why is change so difficult? It's because Tong Chi-hwa wanted to privatize the railway. Well, if you want, competition between buses and railways were irrelevant. The MTR is also part real estate projects. How can you blame the Hong Kong public? You've made grave errors. You're building new towns, satellite towns, but there's no traffic infrastructure. Look at how much money you spent on the border checkpoints. The MTR is making money off tourists. Have the public benefited from this extra income? No. Do you understand, Secretary? You're a shareholder now. We'll see fights breaking out between mainlanders and Hong Kong people eventually. I'm not joking. This occurs in my constituency. It takes you so much time to think about early bird concessions. Well, you need to conduct trial and error. You now want to engage MIT and Stanford. Well, the American public transport system is notorious. It's going bankrupt. Why do you want to engage these American universities? Which American subway system is operating profitably? I just quote you one example. I asked from Admiralty to Tsim Sha Tsui, how much was the fare? You need to tell Hong Kong people within the short term what measures you have. We're not asking you to be a prophet. You just need to conduct trial and error. We have human factors at play. Consumer behavior changes according to incentives. You just need to run some trials. Just like the chairman, you can, if you just rely on visual inspection, it will be wrong. Time's up. So we've concluded this discussion and it is 12:15. We should conclude at 12:45. So I've decided to extend by 15 minutes. And does anybody object? Because even if we go to 1:15, we only have 1 hour. So we have the few incidents in the past few months. So 1:15? How many people do we have? We only have 5 people. Wong Kwok-hing, Fan Kwok-bin, Lo Wai-kok, God Pui-fan, Tien Buck-san, Lo Wai-hing, Leung Kok-hong. Who else? Chen Hang-bin. Anybody else? We have 8. Five minutes each. Wong Kwok-hing. Wong Kwok-hing, Fan Kwok-bin, Lo Wai-kok, God Pui-fan, Tien Buck-san, Lo Wai-hing, Chen Hang-bin. Fan Kwok-wei, Chen Hang-bin, and Lei Chok-yan. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing. Not yet, not your turn yet. Today we have some documents. 9801314 and 8961314. It's about the incidents, so we won't go through the details. So we'll have the government and MTR give us a background to these incidents. So Secretary will go first.
Mr. Chairman, on the 16th of December, there was the service suspension of Changquan Line and part of the Kunchung Line. And then we have seen some major incidents on the East Rail Line and Light Rail. Well, as a result of the faulty insulator of the overhead line, there was a service suspension. It attracted widespread public attention. There were queries as to whether systematic faults and whether there's something wrong with the repair maintenance. We take this seriously. We have also asked the MTR to investigate into the incidents, adopt improvement measures, and prevent the recurrence. The EMSD is the safety regulator. It follows closely on the improvement measures. It will also check the safety of the corporation. The details are set out in the paper. I don't want to go into the details. In a moment, the corporation will also talk about the causes of the incident. Now, you have the impression that we have got many incidents. You want to know whether there are major problems with the MTR for safety and reliability. There were 143 cases of incidents of 8 minutes or above delay, so the lowest since the rail merger in 2007. On the face of it, we don't see a drop in the reliability level, but then we should have the best service, and we have to find out about the cause of each and every incident so as to prevent a recurrence. Currently, for public transport, the MTR takes up about 40% of the patronage. 5 million passenger trips being made. So it is important to uphold safety and reliability. And it is legitimate for the public to expect a high level of service. Within 10 days' time, there were 2 cases of insulator faults of the overhead lines. I talked to the CEO as well as the chairman of the MTR so as to find out about the power supply system of the MTR. We want to know in details as to whether there are anything wrong with the system of power supply. After the incidents, the EMSD went to the site to follow up on the replacement of the insulators by the corporation. The MTR has already decided to replace all the insulators of the same batch. The replacement at the 65 critical points have been completed. For the insulators manufactured by other manufacturers, there will be a sample testing, and it will cover the entire network. Expected to be completed in 6 months' time, that is before August this year. The latest August this year, there will be an independent safety expert to be engaged by the MTR so as to look at the power supply system. It will cover a number of things. First of all, every component of the system, like technology, quality assurance, installation, repair, maintenance. It is expected to complete it in June this year. The EMSD is the safety regulator. The EMSD should professionally look at the testing requirements and also check the findings, and there should be an independent assessment. EMSD will also have an independent safety expert to vet the findings submitted by the MTRCL. The EMSD will complete a report. On the basis of that, the Hong Kong government will see if we need to expand the scope of the study, like covering other systems as well. We will then try to find out whether other systems are to be investigated into as well, to find out if there are inadequacies, that is, in addition to the overhead system. We are very concerned about the incidents which are quite frequent recently. We take it seriously to urge the MTRCL to find out about the causes of the incidents. Last month, the light rail also had something similar happening. There is an insulator fault, and then there was service disruption. And then in December, for the Chang Kwan O line and the Kwun Tong line, there was service suspension. The causes have been identified, and the MTR will share the observations with you. I will invite Mr. J. Walter, CEO, to give you a report.
Chairman, honorable members, first, let me sincerely apologize again to all of our passengers and to the members here who were affected by the rail service disruptions over the past several weeks. MTR is critically important to the people of Hong Kong. We understand that, and we understand the high expectations that people have of our service. And the recent disruptions do not reflect the level of service that we work to provide. It is understandable that as a result of these incidents, you asked whether we are investing in the railway to ensure the highest degree of reliability. I want to assure you that we are making investment, over $5 billion every year, and that everyone at MTR, all 16,000 people who work here in Hong Kong, is focused on providing high-quality services each and every day. But the result was not satisfactory, and there are certainly lessons to be learned from this. The most important weakness, which became apparent through a review of the East Rail incidents, is the sourcing of materials and the related quality assurance process. Global sourcing is a reality for every major company today, but that cannot be an excuse. We must do a better job of assuring the quality of critical parts, no matter where they are manufactured or how large or small they may be. We are taking steps to immediately improve our quality assurance process for these parts and for other critical components. I should also say that we have completed the replacement of the defective insulators at the critical locations on the East Rail line, and as the Secretary has mentioned, we have appointed an independent expert to conduct a comprehensive review of our whole overhead line system. We take every incident that occurs very seriously, and we will seek continuous improvements to maintain Hong Kong's reputation for having the very best railway in the world. Mr. Chairman, we will work to rebuild the trust that our passengers as a whole have in us to deliver them to their destinations safely, comfortably, and on time. Thank you.
基於時間問題呢，
As a result of the time constraint, I think we can start to ask the questions. Do you want to supplement just a few words? Because we have a time constraint. Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, how much time do you need? Maybe we just go directly to the last slide. Yes, I'll give you 3 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I understand that recently you are all concerned about the 2 incidents in on East Rail concerning insulators, and then again we have got insulator problem on the light rail. For the 3 insulators that have a problem, they were all provided by the same manufacturer. So we are concerned about the same batch of insulators. We have replaced the same batch of insulators. For other though produced by different manufacturers, we will follow up with the manufacturers, and we will stop for the time being getting more from them. And then for the other insulators in the network, we are going to have sample testing, and we hope that the test can be completed in 6 months' time. And then to further assure ourselves of the quality, when we take delivery, we will have sample testing, and then we will also test the insulation functions before we install them. And then we have also got an independent safety expert to carry out an overall review of the power supply system of the overhead lines, and it covers acquisition, QC, technical standards, etc. And we would like to benchmark ourselves with the world-class standards, and we will identify improvement measures. This is expected to finish in June. For the inconvenience caused to the passengers, once again on behalf of the MTRCL, I would like to extend our apologies to the passengers. For each and every incident, we take it very seriously. We find out the cause, we improve upon it to prevent a recurrence so as to minimize the inconvenience caused to the passengers. Thank you. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing. Mr. Chairman, there are so many incidents occurring at the MTR system. I think it must go back to a long time ago. For the composition of the MTR staff, 1/4 of them are from the contractors. That is, the work has been outsourced. In other words, they cannot accumulate the experience. And then for a long time, the staff employed have problems with gaps in the experience. In other words, this is bound to give rise to problems. So I urge the administration to take this matter seriously. Now I've got 2 questions. After the incidents, and in fact the LegCo has already endorsed motions urging the administration to punish the board of directors as well as the senior management of the MTRCL. But then for Annex C, we are told that the MTR will study the matter. I want to know when we can get a reply so that the punishment isn't on the passengers, rather it would be on the directors, on the senior management, so that you will be subject to pressure, so that you will be incentivized to improve. My second question is in relation to the size of the penalty. I think the MTRCL is shortchanging us, and the government just turned a blind eye to it. Why I say so? This is because for the delay, I think it has been sort of adjusted. In fact, the delay has been for as long as 3 to 4 hours, and yet you would only regard it as an hour's delay. You just try to sort of give a discount to the duration of the delay. So I want to know why you have underreported the duration of the delay. So please answer the questions. Chairman, I hope I have got time to answer the members' question, in particular how the penalty is to be calculated, and then maybe they can also supplement. During your last meeting, you passed a motion. We take the matter seriously, and we have also passed your suggestions and comments to the Board of Directors of the MTRCL. They will follow on that, and this will be discussed by the Remuneration Committee. My question is, when are you going to give us an answer? Very soon, the Remuneration Committee will study the matter. Will it be ready when we next have our meeting? I can't give an answer on their behalf, but I understand that they take the matter seriously. What about the existing penalty level? Well, how was it arrived at? Allow me to explain. Last year, there was the fare mechanism review, and in fact, we have got a clear way to calculate the duration of the delay. First, there is the total suspension of service. Of course, it starts from the service suspension until resumption of service. On Chang Kwan O line, Kwun Tong line, that was what happened. For an entire period, a station was without service at all. And for that incident, it was 4 hours or so, and the penalty was decided on that basis. In another scenario, it is relatively less serious but more common. That is, service has been maintained, and then what is the delay to be calculated? For a train, we want to find out by how much longer has it taken. Take the incident in question. For Tai Po Market to Lo Wu Lok Ma Chau, the service was still maintained, but normally speaking, from Lo Wu to Hong Kong, it took 45 minutes. Now, during the incident, trains were delayed differently, and we took the longest delay as the benchmark for the penalty calculation. And then, instead of 42 minutes, it was extended to 122 minutes. In other words, a delay of 80 minutes.
For example, on the accident 18th of February, from 4:20 to 7:20, there were 3-hour delay, but they were only fined 2 million. And on 9th of February, there was close to 4 hours of abnormal hours, but they were only fined 1 million. So this penalty system needs to be reviewed. You disagree with their calculation methods? I have questions about the different lines. So aside from the incidents, we're concerned about quality and professionalism. It is deteriorating. I'm questioning, is the MTR building new lines and therefore frontline workers and engineers are under undue stress? For example, some subpar trains were purchased by the express rail. I'd like to ask the Secretary, how do you monitor the procurement? How do you ensure that we won't have safety concerns? Regarding the Zhongguan line and October 2013, why couldn't they provide a design solution? This is a professional misconduct. In the whole design installation, the MTR has shifted the responsibility to the contractor, and they pretended as if they never participated in this installation. So I want to ask MTR, how do you ensure other installation design are okay? Will you conduct a comprehensive check? In document A, paragraph 2, you say that there was an error in installation and you have two similar installations for comparison. Well, can these be identified by visual inspection? In the monthly check, in the annual check, how come these were not identified? What was the reason? I suspect, do we have contractors who were did not install it properly? And what is the role of these contractors? Regarding the East Line, there were 2 insulator incidents, and I'd like to ask, these new insulators, it can be used for 20 years. Why did we have a problem after only 3 years? And how could it be changed in 10 days? So, do these insulators have defects? Have we checked them for integrity? And I'd also like to ask MTR, what other components does MTR use that is manufactured from in China? Will you inspect all your mainland China-made components to see whether they're up to standard? Regarding the government monitoring of trains procurement, I'd like the EMSD department to respond. In purchasing trains, we will look at the design. When the train arrives in Hong Kong, we'll undertake a series of safety tests to ensure passenger safety. The safety check will be done in Hong Kong. We'll do the checking before they come on stream. MTR?
I do want to make a general point about the service delivery. Again, I apologize for the incidents that we had. But if you look at the whole of 2013, the number of recorded incidents on MTR was the lowest number of incidents that have taken place since the merger. I do not believe there is any indication that we are slipping in our performance. We have made and learned in terms of the quality assurance of parts, which is a key point that I think comes out of the overhead line incidents that we've had. I will let Tony Lee, our Chief of Operations Engineer Yilder, Dr. Jacob Kam, to speak about that. But the service delivery of MTR in 2013 was the highest that we have ever achieved.
Thank you. 金博士。
有好幾個問題啦，陳議員，多謝。
Well, the building of new lines, we have a professional team responsible, so it will not add extra workload to our frontline staff. Regarding Zhongguan the bracket installed was not installed according to design. So if you rely on visual inspection only, we cannot tell that they did not comply with design, because we have many different design options. So even so, but when we build new lines, they have used better design parameters. That is, any changes from the design can be detected easier. We also have records of as-built conditions, and this allows us to compare it with the design. Regarding the East Line insulator, this brand name has more than 100 years history. In our line, it's been used. It's been used in the East Line for almost 20 years. The performance has been good. And before the merger, KCR had also purchased from this supplier. After the merger, we continued to procure this product with the same specifications. They also have quality assurance. So under these conditions, we've had these incidents and we've learned a lesson, and we feel we can do better. And as Dr. Lee said, before installation, we'll conduct installation tests. Mr. Lo Wai Kok. Last December, there was this incident in Zhongguanou. In our committee, subcommittee, I had mentioned that the MTR should review its risk management system, because on the last occasion we had a passive component failure. A cable broke, and that led to a big problem. I do not need to repeat. So why does it involve risk management? Because in a complex system, we have many small components. They might be moving or stationary components. The probability of failure and the outcome of failure and recovery from error are all complex issues. So the solution was simple. Adding a wire to it would just resolve the question. But we need a comprehensive review of the risk management. But I'm disappointed with MTR's response. They say in writing that the MTR risk management is of world standard. The MTR system is in compliance. Well, I've been in industry for some 30-odd years. Well, you cannot just look at the superficial system. You have to go through a lot of certification. So aside from the basic system, there are also details. There are technical details, management details, and we now have a similar incident. The same insulator, a stationary component, a component that is not expected to fail. So we have assessment, monitoring requirements. So the lesson we learned, MTR should be smarter. It's not just replacing the insulator. They are now recruiting an overseas consultant to review the whole electricity supply, the procurement, and so on. That's the correct attitude, but that should be expanded, because this time we're just dealing with the electricity supply. Do we have other unidentified issues? You can't just say that you have a world-class management system. There are many other details. So on the last occasion, I asked for a review of the risk assessment system because I think there are underlying risks. Can these issues be avoided? We will understand these from the perspective of engineering. You might not pay a lot of attention to components, stationary components. Your risk assessment might focus on moving components because there's wear and tear. But for stationary components, you might neglect them. I'm just assuming that, but it just so happens that we have similar incidents recently. So you really need to review your risk assessment system. So some legislators might question the outsourcing of maintenance, but there is specialization. Some work might benefit from outsourcing. Outsourcing might be done better than in-house. So we cannot generalize and say it's the fault of the outsourcing arrangement. We now have global manufacturing now is a global exercise. When we take delivery of goods, we should have testing, sampling, and do a better job. I don't require a response, but if you we're out of time. Regarding the Zhongguan East Rail and Light Rail incidents, it affects residents, and we've given the impression that MTR is failing its job. And the public also feel that is our system aging, and in the future will we have a lot more incidents occurring? So we now have a confidence crisis in the MTR. So I think it's necessary to have a comprehensive review. Well, the MTR has said they learned their lesson, but there have been so many incidents. So we don't see what lessons they've learned from the recovery. In the East Rail example, we see that shuttle buses, directions, notice, need to be improved. The public feel that it was very chaotic, and we can see on the news the public were at a loss. They didn't know how to get back home. So the MTR, I don't think they've learned their lesson. I'd also like to ask, you said that the Secretary said that he would urge the EMSD to conduct checks. So within the MTR, the insulators, has the EMSD monitored these? How did they do so? Will they inspect? When was the last inspection? And the last question is compensation for passengers. Passengers don't get any compensation. So will you come up with a compensation program for our passengers? Who would like to take up the questions? We don't have a compensation. The MTR service, if there is a penalty system, so in the second trip of the day, passengers can get an incentive, a compensation. Regarding EMSD monitoring, I'll defer to the EMSD. Is it Mr. Wu? The EMSD has monitored MTR safety along risk management. We look at the usage, the service frequency, the passenger capacity. And this year, we'll have 160 odd checks each line. Every year, we'll undergo 10-20 checks. So, railway safety and high-risk components will step up our checks in those areas. In the process, if we find any abnormalities, we will further step up the checks. If EMSD feels there is a safety threat to the public, the MSD will also conduct investigations. The focus is to enhance safety and avoid similar incidents.
Mr. Chairman, what about the insulators? How come that they were not discovered by the EMSD previously? Mr. Lee? Well, for the insulator failure, I think it is about the manufacturing defect on the part of the manufacturer. For the insulator, I think at the time of purchase, it should have been tested to identify the manufacturing failure. So, in other words, you would not inspect or test their parts and components. Well, for the MTR, CL, and the MSD, as far as the testing and inspections are concerned, there are loops or there are gaps. Is that the case? Maybe that's for the Bureau. So what is the extent of the EMSD's functions? The EMSD is the safety regulator. Of course, we as in the Bureau has to make sure that they discharge their duties. Now you have leave it in their hands and then it's not working.
Just to clarify, because I'm afraid my comments may have been misunderstood. As I spoke about global sourcing, as I spoke about the need for us to be able to improve and the lesson learned in our quality assurance process regarding parts, I have meant this for all of the critical components of our railway. So I'm not just referring to our overhead lines, but I'm referring generally to the point that we need to improve this for all of the critical components of our railway. To answer questions that have been raised about the service interruption, we mobilized 150 shuttle buses, 250 additional staff on stations, as well as getting information out to 1.8 million people who have downloaded the MTR mobile app.
We have no doubt about what you've done. The question is the result. 好啦，而家到我本人，我基本上。
It's now my turn to ask questions. Basically, 3 questions. For the Chung Kwun O line problem, well, to be frank with you, I found it unbelievable. It was supposed to be a design and build system. In other words, you get somebody to design for you and then it would be built by them as well. In other words, it is a packaged arrangement. So if something goes wrong, it means the design is at fault. So you have to go after them. And yet Dr. Kam has said something which I haven't heard or quite frequently heard about. That is, at the time, the design, in other words, the design is not one wire for 2. It must be 1 wire for 1. So that's the design. But then your working partner failed to see that the design was not followed. You should take legal action. For the design and build contract, when you take delivery, I would have expected that you would have checked it against the design plan. Now they decided they have mistakes in calculations, then I can understand. But then there is a design plan and yet they don't do it accordingly. This is strange. And then for the insulator, now you are going to get the equipment to check it one by one. You need to explain why when you drew up the contract, since this part is so important, it is affecting the most crucial part, and you have got sample testing on at two levels. Why didn't you do it on your own? And now if you check it one by one, now for your machine, you can only check the insulating function, but not the tension. If you need to check the tension, you need to break it up to check it. So how can you assure us that after you're satisfied with the insulating function, the insulators are fine? Because if you break it up to check, then of course it's fine, but you need to order another new batch. And then for the penalty system.
Nowadays, we have a variable pay system for all the senior executives, where part of their variable pay is tied in with delays. Will you be considering that at your board meeting? 三個問題。
主席，或者我答咗頭。
Three questions here. Let me answer the first two technical questions, and then Mr. Warder will answer the third question about mechanism. Chung Kwon-hing first. Well, at the time of construction, there was a variation. According to what we know, the design was not followed. As I have reported, when we took delivery, our colleagues have to maintain and repair different insulators. And in other cases, we do have the case of one wire for two. So if you just look at the support bracket, it will be difficult to tell that it hasn't followed the design. But since this incident, we would step up the arrangements when we take delivery. After the contractor has finished with the work, of course it would sign to say that it has been following the design. But still, for the design and construction, I hope that we can have better control. It would be too late to check only at the last minute. And for our new railway project staff, they have introduced new machines to enable us to follow the design and build contracts so that we can identify the problems earlier. Back to the question of insulators. Chair, in fact, you are very knowledgeable about the situation. As I have said, we have been using the same brand for 10, 20 years. It has performed well, and it was acquired by the KCRC in the past, and we just placed the same order, and they have got their quality assurance, and they've got a third party to test it in addition to their own test. Now what happens is that we will test it on our own, and of course we can test for the insulation, and for the tension, of course we have to stress it for so much that it is broken, and then when broken it cannot be used again, so we can at most be carrying out a random sampling test. Now we're trying to review our design to see if we can have a redundant redundant insulator, so that even when one is broken, we have got another as well. And then we may be constrained by the space available. But if we can do it, at least we can reduce the chance of having incidents.
Can confirm that the corporation does have a variable pay system for all of the senior management. It is directly related to the performance of the railway.
Will you consider bringing this concept to the board?
The board is now reviewing the role that the major incidents that we've seen now has and whether or not it's adequately reflected in the variable pay system. And they will be handling that. To be very clear and no surprise to you, this is a matter handled by the non-executive directors of the board, so it's not a discussion that I participate in.
咁呢一方面呢，局方你要諗諗啦。佢而家話喺非
Now, SH, he's saying that it is being dealt with by the non-executive directors. Yes, I've said that it's being taken up by the Remuneration Committee. Ms. Emily Lau, Mr. J. Warder has said that in relation to the incidents, the number of incidents occurring last year, that was the lowest level since the merger. But does he know that the public are really angry. There are a number of incidents, many people are affected, and it lasted for a long time. So don't say that you have got the lowest number of incidents. Do you expect praises from us? And for Chang Kwon-oh, I think they're most unhappy. It is such a community that they are stranded there, and when the trains can't come back, then they can't go out. For other places, they've got alternatives, but for Chang Kwon-oh, they don't. So the government as a whole must think in the interest of the Chang Kwon-oh residents. Penalties, pay cuts, etc. Yes, it should be followed up. And what about the impact on the passengers? What about lowering the fares for the passengers? Now you have committed so many mistakes, so perhaps you should provide something to compensate the passengers. Reducing the fare. Just now we've been told about the number of shuttle buses, etc. But do you not have a performance pledge so that with how many minutes within the incident there will be shuttle buses to take the passengers away? They want to have a comfortable ride. They want to be punctual. Sometimes we see 1,000 passengers gathering in a station and they know nothing about it, not even a staff member holding or speaking into a loudspeaker. So any pledges, any cut in the fare levels? 2 questions here. Who will answer the questions? Maybe let me talk about the arrangements. In Annex B to the paper, there are details. I don't want to take up your time to go through it again. But then in relation to information dissemination, manpower, etc., within how short a period of time can we get shuttle buses to carry the passengers? In fact, we have a contract with the relevant bus group. Within 1 and 1.5 hours time, with 40 buses, 2 hours, 100 buses to be sent in, and then 7 buses within the 30 to 45 minutes after receiving the information. It depends on the road conditions as well and other factors. We have the agreement with the Public Omnibus Operators Association. Fair cut?
Points that were raised. I do appreciate the impact that the incidents have had on the public of Hong Kong. Again, in my remarks, I hope that has been clear. MTR is accountable for that and feels badly about the impact that this has had. At the same time, I do think it is important to recognize the performance in 2013 and the efforts that have been made throughout the corporation and our operating staff to be able to deliver a service day in and day out for the people of Hong Kong.
Mr. Warder, can you reduce the fare given that there are so many incidents and the passengers are hopping mad?
We will follow the agreement that we have reached with government in regard to the service performance arrangement. As has previously been indicated, that arrangement and the monies from that are returned to the public in the form of lower fares through a second trip discount.
主席，我想問下局長啦，可唔可以即係寬鬆啲去
？STH, can you not be more generous to the passengers in the light of so many mistakes committed by the corporation? Well, last year, when we revised the fare mechanism, we looked at everything. The purpose isn't to punish the MTR so as to improve the service and safety. I think we should enhance safety and we should reduce the suspension. No, that's not what I meant. Passengers have been suffering from this, so maybe you should reduce the fares by, say, a number of dollars across the board. Well, there is. How much? Well, the penalty system. What is the money for? How much money is involved? All the fines will go back to the passengers. What is the timetable? Will it take 10 years? Every year we will calculate the amount of money fined. Can you not do it within a month's time? We can provide the information to you. Mr. Chairman, when we drew up the fare adjustment mechanism, we made it clear. We'll look at the number of incidents occurring within the year. We have an idea about the total fine, and then it will be returned to the passengers in the following year. In other words, we have to wait until the following year. We do the calculations once a year. Mr. Wong Kwok-hing, it's good that STH isn't the chief for security. Catching the criminals, punishing the criminals heavily won't eliminate crime, but does it mean that you won't deal with crime? As to how we're going to handle the MTRCL, how to punish them, I think they should set up a fund so that the committee can set up an independent research and investigative body. Because it has become the norm for you to deliver unsatisfactory service, that's much better than just returning 10 cents per trip. Now, even if you present the findings of your investigation, I won't trust you. Now, you say that you have got someone from MIT, someone from Stanford University. I don't care about that. It's better if you set up a fund, say $10 million, and then we get someone who is credible, and then we have got honorable members sitting nearby. I think they can investigate into your problems.
You would have been made obsolete in the marketplace. Try take-out delivery, curry brisket. If they deliver the wrong thing, they'll lose their job, they'll lose their business. You've been given everything. You always say it's hard to investigate, so can you tell me now what has occurred? I see EMSD. EMSD is not doing their job. Will you take my advice? You wouldn't heed me any notice. I'm willing to bet somebody might have told you that it wouldn't work. But people might have told you that you can't take delivery of certain components. It has failed inspection. Michael Tian has done all this before. Why don't you get him as your consultant? The best mechanism is the MTR being a government-controlled company. They should be fined, and the fines should go towards a consultant company that would check their performance. That's done around the world. You don't have an independent mechanism. So I want to ask EMSD, did they show you all the documents when you checked on them? Did they? Otherwise, you're not doing your job. What has EMSD done? Do you have an archive of emails and so on? Could you, EMSD, respond? The MTR said they ordered some components and the components were not up to standard. Well, did you tell them? Did you warn them? Or did you provide them with some information? Well, first of all, the insulators, these are high-pressure insulators, and when you take delivery of the goods, you take delivery in at the factories, and then it's shipped to Hong Kong, and there's no further testing. And on this occasion, we felt that the MTR in procurement and inspection, they had a problem. We agree. So we want MTR to conduct an investigation, and we audit the investigation. And on this occasion, on 9th of February, we had colleagues on the site. On the 10th of February, we had a meeting with them, and we found that the insulator, that faulty insulator, just visually we could tell there was a problem, and we told them they needed to consider replacing. That they did testing and arrangements. Then we know that. The question now is, why did you allow the factory to do their own testing? Just now I said, Hon WONG Kwok had already said, these are stationary components. Aside from the railways, even for utilities, companies, they're using these insulators. And when they take delivery at the factory, well, perhaps you need to review this practice as well. Should it be delegated to the factory? You shouldn't wait till accidents happen. Of course, we will review what could be done, but I want to say that in actual engineering conditions, sometimes you need to have some faith in certification processes. Otherwise, you need to inspect all the components. That's not feasible. Well, if they have a breach, you should sue them. You need to prove that you're innocent. Time's up. Why does MTR have a series of incidents? Why are people so mad with them? It's because there's been inconvenience. Well, MTR also needs to consider its public image. You have a poor public image. When the fair mechanism you increase to the max, you don't make it convenient, you don't have washrooms, you don't have barrier-free access. So when incidents occur, people will express their anger. According to reports, in the recent years, MTR has two scenarios. It's been growing too quickly, including Hong Kong, on the mainland, or even other areas. You're growing your business. You're managing many systems. So we have reasonable doubt. Have you taken experienced professionals and deployed them overseas and therefore affecting Hong Kong's quality? I want you to clarify that. Second, the second accusation is you're maximizing your profit. For example, in procurement, have you chosen inferior products at a lower cost? So are you sacrificing quality? Second question for MSD, in the inspection of the railway system, well, of course you should follow the blueprints, but when EMSD approves the railway operation, what role do you play? So if they did not comply, will you sue them? Will you fine them? We know we have a lot of rail projects coming on stream. So have they complied with the building plans? Is EMSD playing its role? Well, first of all, our operations expansion, as Mr. Walder has told me and my team's mission is our home base. Could you tell us how many people you have deployed overseas? At any point in time, we have a team of 10,000 in Hong Kong, and at any point in time, we won't have more than 100 people deployed outside of Hong Kong. Another point is, have we maximized profit? Well, to give you an example of the insulator, We procured these insulators for East Rail. Well, I told you we've been using it for 20 years, and KCR had also procured that. We had not we did not look at the price. We just used the same part number. Have they raised your price? I don't have that information. Well, if they have not raised your price, but there's inflation, well, there has. I can provide the information later. What about corporate image? Will you respond to that?
Yes, please.
MTR has been working very, very hard as part of what we call our listening and responding program on exactly the sort of things that you are mentioning right now. We move very quickly to be able to add train service, as we talked about earlier in this meeting, 1,300 train trips. We've added quickly to be able to put staff around our station to make it more convenient. We're adding lifts at every one of our stations to ensure that it's accessible to people with disabilities. We're adding toilets at all of our interchange stations. We're adding seats in our stations. We've invested in new mobile technology so it fits with the needs of a 21st century society. We've put free Wi-Fi in all of our stations so that people have more convenient ways of being able to do that. All of this is in fact designed so that we can try to be responsive to the community, not just with the 8,000 trains that we run every day, but in the broader ways that people look at and think about MTR.
So you feel that there's no problem? Could you respond to my other questions? What other questions do you have? Well, I asked EMSD's role. Could EMSD respond? We will conduct random checks. We will conduct safety checks. When we conduct these safety checks with MTR to ensure that the safe system is safe. Mr. Lei Chak-yan. Well, if you refer to the incident, it indicates MTR is irresponsible. So the first incident occurred on the 9th, and on the 18th, the 2nd, and in January, the light rail had an incident. So between the 9th and 18th, what have you done? Well, EMSD said they went to the site. We know it's an insulator problem. But 18th was also insulator. So why do they occur so close in time? Was there neglect? That's my first question. Second, is the whole MTR, will you conduct a comprehensive review? Of course, you said you will recruit overseas independent consultant to review the overhead power cable. Well, will you also examine quality and safety at the same time? Whenever there's an incident, there's a post-mortem analysis, but now we have a system failure. It could explode at any time, and each time will have serious consequences. So that's my second question. The third, you will have less than 100 people deployed overseas, the 100 out of 10,000 staff. Well, if you have the most senior engineers or if you have maintenance engineers all gone, then you might be neglecting Hong Kong. So that's a meaningless figure. The question is, which 100 people are deployed overseas? 22nd of January to February, 9th of February to 18th of February, the same incident. So what happened between 9th and 18th? Why do we have the same incident? But the first insulated incident was 22nd of January. Chairman, you're correct. You are correct, Chairman. 22nd of January. Professor Kam, Thank you, Chairman. With the insulators, as Chairman mentioned, there are different scenarios. In our system, we have more than 10,000 insulators with different functions. In the light rail incident, it's not related to the two East Rail incidents. If you look at the cause, in the light rail, it had insufficient tension, so we replaced the whole batch, and we've conducted our own tensile strength tests. In East Rail, those are related. On 9th of February, the EMSD had already instructed us to replace the components, and we had commenced that work. When did they ask you to replace? The next day, 10th. The incident was on the 9th of February, and on the 10th they instructed us to change the parts. In our inventory, we have the same batch of insulators. So if we replace those, and if we weren't able to test the quality, we were just installing the same problem. So we needed to check what had occurred, whether there was a problem with the insulation properties. And very fortunately, the local universities were able to assist us, and we could conduct this test. And then we did testing. We had wanted to change the same batch as long as they could pass the test, but we tested 11 components, and one readings were not up to standard, and we felt that that was not appropriate. So we had to find other components, other substitute components. So within 4 days, we conducted the test, the batch, and new substitutes, and we proved that it worked. And we tested installation because its size is different. We had to test and to see that the substitute could fit. And the second night we tested if we to change the whole batch, how long it would take, and that was Monday night. And after Monday night, the second day, we started the conversion, and then the second incident happened.
Looking back, you had the first problem with insulators on the 22nd of January. Had you been more decisive and you double the installations, then you could have prevented the incident on the 9th. I think you did solve the problem by doubling the wires, but that would have taken longer. The two things are unrelated. We have got 10,000 more insulators of different brands, of different kinds. If you have one failure and then you try to replace all the 10,000 of them, I don't think in terms of engineering or projects it is good. I think they had a poor system in terms of taking delivery. You were hastily putting yourselves together to carry out the test. It shows that you didn't have the test in the past. So there's this problem of the sense of crisis. So we're worried that there would be problems, not just with insulators, but with others as well. We have already exceeded our time, so thank you once again for the Bureau and the Corporation. Lastly, if I may check with the Bureau whether you can give us the following information. That is, how do you define the duration of the delay, which forms the basis of calculation of the size of the fine? I think it will be complicated. It is difficult to understand it verbally. So please give us the information. Yes, we'll certainly do that. AOB, any AOB? No? Then meeting adjourned. Thank you.